Welcome to With All Due Respect. This is a podcast for women over 40 who are looking for sane, frank advice about their health and wellness, especially through and after menopause. I'm Amanda Thebe, a personal trainer and nutrition coach, and the author of the best-selling book, Menopocalypse: How I Learned to Thrive During Menopause and How You Can Too. I'd love you to join me every week as I chew the fat with some fab guests on hot topics that directly impact you. I also know the power of conversation is lost, and there's nothing better than sitting down for a natter with your mate and putting the world to rights. And that's exactly what I'll be doing with this podcast. We'll really get to know my guests, warts and all. I've made it my mission to help you by exploding a few myths and presenting you with plain, simple facts. These inspiring conversations will hopefully empower you to be a healthy, strong, resilient bitch, just like me. Before we get started, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review, and then visit me at amandathebe.com. And now let's get started on today's show. Hi everyone, welcome back to With All Due Respect. I'm Amanda Thebe, and today I am joined by Maria Luque. Hello.
Hello.
I'm going to just let you know a little bit about Maria, then we're going to do a deep dive into this. I'm really excited to have Maria here. She is a health science professor and certified health education specialist with a PhD in health science. Oh my God, Maria, with a PhD in health sciences and Master of Science in health education. You're probably one of the most qualified people I know in the fitness and exercise space talking about menopause, because your PhD was in menopausal women, right? And like when I first started seeing you talking about this, Maria, I was like, who is this woman? Why is she talking about menopausal women? How do you get a doctorate in that? Like, this is I think pretty groundbreaking. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And oh, by the way, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yes, and I just organic. It's very organic how I ended up being interested in menopause, because I started this 10 years ago when it wasn't anything to talk about, right? Like now everyone is an expert and everybody wants to talk about it and make money of it. So I was going through my PhD studies and I had to pick a dissertation topic. And I saw people around me. I have a lot of clients and friends that were going through menopause. And I thought, how perfect would it be to do my study that I have to do anyway on something that is really relevant to the people in my life. And that's something that I will go through, that I'm now going through. 10 years ago, I was nowhere near perimenopause. Now I'm full in it now. So I appreciate all the knowledge that I've gathered. So that's really how I stumbled upon menopause. And my research study was on the impact of physical activity on quality of life during menopause. My emphasis has always been quality of life. It hasn't been about getting thinner or looking different or the how you look, but more how you feel and how movement plays a role in it. And that's always been my focus. And it's still to this day is my focus.
Yeah, I know. I love it. And we've had lots of chats sort of like offline about this and how the menopausal woman is portrayed, especially in the fitness world. It's really harmful, and you're doing a great job of turning that around. And we're going to do a deep dive into that. But I'd like to actually understand a little bit like your background. So I think you were a personal trainer as well initially, right? You've been doing some training along those lines, but you've just took that to the next level. And you also had a military history as well. So can you just tell us a bit about yourself, Maria?
Yes. So I'm your typical I grew up in Germany and was born and raised there. And probably know lifestyle in Europe is a little bit more active than I have experienced here. It's just the natural part of life to grow up and move and ride your bike to school and play soccer or it was very active. So that's where I came from. And I've always had a love for movement and being outside. And when I came to the States, it kind of came to a real halt. It was a culture shock from a movement perspective. I thought people here aren't moving. And I moved to San Antonio, which was, it's on top of that, it's one of the cities with the most obesity in the country. And so it
was really? I didn't know that. I've been and seen it and didn't feel that, but that's very interesting.
Yeah. And so I was and it's, the infrastructure isn't set up to be like to move, to walk places. You have to take your car everywhere. And I live in Austin now, and it's still the same. Unless you live and work where you are, you have to take your car to go to places. So when I enlisted in the military, I volunteered immediately on top of what I was doing as my job, to do fitness, like to be one of the trainers and do that. And then became the fitness program manager and really dove in there. And I was lucky enough that when I was in the military a long time ago now, the Air Force was going through a change in their fitness program, which was then the bicycle and the push-ups. And that was pretty much it. Like they were always being made fun of because they had the least requirements from a physical activity perspective. But the Air Force was changing it and doing a brand new program. And I was picked to be part of this, to design and help design this new fitness program, which was so fascinating. And that's when I knew, I'm like, this is what I need to do with my life. Like, I just love this part of movement and helping people and figuring things out and making things better. And so that wasn't my job. This was all on the side, because you have an actual job and then you have all these other duties that you do. And I volunteered to be the fitness program manager for my unit and for the base there. And so I did that on top of what I was doing, which was logistics, supporting the logistics for squadron then. And that's where it kind of started. Like, the passion for movement and fitness has always been there. I just have always sought it out no matter what I was doing. And then eventually I thought, I just need to not do other things and make this actually what I want to do. But I have a real, I have a real need to learn, which is why I got my master's degree. I got my bachelor's in Germany in languages. So I'm a translator as well. And then I started doing a master's degree in business administration in San Antonio. And I thought, this isn't it. And then that's when I switched.
This is not me. Yeah.
can't do it. I did 2 classes and then I went to health sciences, and it's been ever since. I have a need to learn. So it's been that constant pursuit to learn, which still drives me to this day, and to change as I go. And that's when I just ended up, for my master's, my thesis was in childhood obesity, creating a program for childhood obesity, a physical activity program for schools. And then when it came time to pick a dissertation topic, I thought, I really don't like working with children. I need to really figure something else out. Like, it's not my calling. I want to create the programs, but it's not my calling to work with small children. And that's how and then I looked around, and it really was just there. I never forced anything. When I actually said, well, this is what I want to do. I want to be a teacher. I want to be an educator, and I want to pursue my passion for movement and fitness. This is how it ended up. So, I'm a professor at this point, but I still do personal training with one-on-one clients. And I do educational workshops for fitness professionals. And I continue to like that. I need that variety to help from all angles.
Yeah, it's like a calling for you, isn't it? And so I love the essentially your sense of perimenopause and menopause found you because you saw that there was a need and your friends were going through this, and there was like almost like we know, and it's changing, but we know that 10 years ago there was no conversation at all in the general population space, but never mind in the fitness space, of which we've been a part of for 30 years each probably. Yes. And I know my education in the personal training world has literally jumped this period of time. I mean, I've got like subspecialties and things like pregnancy and athletic performance, like working with pro athletes, but then it jumped to senior fitness or rehabilitation fitness. There's nothing that talks about menopause in the fitness world. And in fact, I've said this many times, like the crusty old white men in the fitness world that I was part of would just be saying, we don't need to do anything and it's just carry on doing the same. Yeah. And while there is a little bit of truth in that, I don't believe we do need to do anything too drastically different. I do feel like there are some nuances in the conversation, and we do need to have some consideration and some focuses that change slightly through menopause. And just to whitewash us, I don't use that term derogatorily. I mean, just to get rid of menopausal women in sort of like the health and wellness space is very frustrating for me. I see the tides are turning. I know you're going to places like all the fitness conventions now and talking about this. Thank goodness. But what I want to ask you then about menopause and fitness is that what were the biggest differences that you saw for menopausal women going through this time of life and how they need to look at fitness differently. And it's a big, big question, because I know we're going to have lots of different areas we can talk about. And I mean, like, what's different from the physical side? What things do they need to be doing differently? From the emotional side, how they talk about fitness and look at themselves. And then just moving forward for like health and longevity. I mean, to me, it's like a big missed opportunity that's happened in our world. And you're filling that gap, of course. So let's dig into that. So, like, what would you say are the things that we need to be like focusing on?
Well, that's a great question, and it's such a big question, right? Because as I've been doing this for, full-time menopause for 10 years, over a decade now, that I've been doing this, and I keep learning and keep changing how I personally work with women because of what I learn from them, like the feedback I get. And for me, the biggest takeaway, if I had to sum it up all in once when it comes to movement, we do have to move. Resistance training has to be part of your workout. It is non-negotiable because it is essential for longevity and for functionality. But how that looks is different for everybody else. It doesn't have to be in the gym. So for me, it's just, if we have to help women find the joy of including these things in, because it looks different for everybody else. We can't just, I think when we start out as personal trainers, we all do this. We think that we need to know what women want, but I know what you should do. So therefore, let me tell you, this is what you need to do. And now my perspective, and I think everyone has to change this, but my perspective has changed to listen to what women are saying and finding out how we can include the things that we know are good into what their lifestyle is, what their joy and their likes are. Because if you force someone to go into the gym or come see you as a personal trainer and they really dislike what you do and they know that they're supposed to do it, they're not going to stick with it. And that also defeats the purpose, right? Because you want them to engage in daily movement that is joyful for them.
And because we know joyful movement equals longevity and stickability, right? It's that simple. And I know that like one of the biggest learning things for me was working one-on-one with people. So yeah, exactly the same process I've gone through. Like, this is what I know you need. And so therefore I'm going to teach it to you. And it was only when I was working one-on-one with people, I was realizing that rigid mindset really doesn't work at all. And given yourself as a participant in fitness permission to make choices, be flexible that day within your workouts, to just find the movement that suits your body that day is not detrimental and it's not giving in. And that's, I think, a narrative I'd like to move away from. Women are like, if I can't do a full 45-minute workout, then I might as well not bother because it doesn't count. And I'm like, okay, we need to just stop and change that. Everything counts. And we always have to look for those wins, right? And it's like you saying, like, if you can find something that gives a woman that win, makes her feel joyful, chances are she's going to stick around for it, right?
Absolutely. And I think if my Instagram feed and my social media feed, it is very, like, I look back sometimes on how it has evolved on what I post about. And it's been very interesting to see how I have changed in the message that I try to put out there, which is, it's really become more of, I want women to use menopause and the transition of it, because we also need to highlight that it's a transition. It isn't something that you're going to be stuck in forever, to figure out new things or re-explore old things. So that's what I've been doing. I've been roller skating and I got on the bike again after, it's been probably 20 years that I've actually biked. And those things where you're thinking, what is it that I used to love to do and why did I give it up? It doesn't have to be going and grabbing dumbbells and doing that. Is that a way to do it? It is. But what if we use this time to figure out what we may have lost in the past, because there may have been life events, children, things that happen, right, that derail you from what you may have liked to do. Or maybe you felt silly that going to the roller skating ring anymore. And I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun. And so it's those things where, why can't we as a fitness professionals help women explore that side that doesn't involve us in it all the time. I think there's a fear amongst fitness professionals to lose clients. Like if they figure out how to do it themselves, then they're going to come and pay me, right? So it's like there's there's innate fear that if they're too self-sufficient, maybe they're not going to want to come and actually work out with you. But I have a feeling like that's how I work. Is I want you to be able to do these things on your own. I don't want you to rely on me. Like it's almost like you want your children to grow up and be self-sufficient. And I want my clients to want to come and work with me because they see value in it personally and things that they might not want to do on their own, like resistance training. But I want them to find all these other things that they can do on their own, right? That bring them joy, that make them move. Again, movement. It's just like we need to move.
And usually, I mean, I remember speaking to Dr. Lisa Lewis, who's her PhD is in the psychology of motivation. So it was so cool. And you've sort of touched on it there. Like if we get women to explore movement, that means that they want to keep participating. It builds curiosity. And the theory that she's explored for her PhD is that when we build curiosity, it makes us strive for more and want to try different things. And in a fitness perspective, that might look like I'm going to go to like a Tums and Bums class. I don't know. I mean, we've all seen them, right, in the local gym. But as she walks and goes to this class for the 3-4 months she's doing it, she might go by the TRX station and go, oh, what's that? I wonder whether I could try that. And that's essentially how we get motivation, is by continually showing up and just exploring and finding the thing that works for us. Because if you don't have to do something if you don't like it, I mean, we're grown-ass adults, right? We're allowed to make those choices.
100%. And I think we have to change the narrative of what movement is and what the benefits are, because now that menopause is a hot topic and there's all these experts and influencers, right? And everyone that wants to sell you something that of course is not going to work. And you've seen them because I've seen you really rag on them. And I roll my eyes because I'm thinking, what is this? But they make money, right? They make money selling these illusions, these quick fixes. And women are at a loss of just, well, I'm supposed to do this, but I'm not supposed to do that. And I'm supposed to do this, but not this. And if you do this and that, and it's like, and then there's one person that says, here is the magic pill. Then it's easy to go down that road. What I try to do is, what are some of the essentials that we need from a functionality perspective? We do need muscle. We need to retain muscle, which is so educating what the benefits are of resistance training. The muscle component is incredibly important, right? We all know we already lose muscle at an accelerated rate as we age. Then menopause hits and it accelerates a little bit more. Bone loss is affected. Like these are actual critical things that have nothing to do with how you look, but with how you will be able to function and live your life with a high quality of life. How do we get people to do something that retains the muscle and strengthens the bone? There could be a million ways to do that, right? We say resistance training, and then suddenly it becomes this visual of just like having to go to the gym and doing these things. But it doesn't have to be. If you have children or dogs or things, like you're lifting things all day, right? It's like you're lifting your groceries, you're lifting your soil when you're gardening, you're doing, how do we not make this purposeful? So if we're saying gardening is the thing that you really love to do, well, next time you do this, why don't we, learn how to pick up the sack of soil in the right way? Like there's a million ways. And this is just an example, right? When we have to understand where women are coming from, where they're at, what motivates them, like what you were saying, what is it that motivates you? And then work within that to create that resistance training that is incredibly important for longevity.
And your account's really good for that. I see you like throwing your kids around. By the way, Maria's got little kids and she's in perimenopause. Oh, sorry, just one. Sorry, and in perimenopause, and so hats off to that, by the way. But yeah, like you show examples of that on your Instagram as well, and it's like that real practical, functional movement and how it transfers over into real life applications. And Actually, I mean, just to sort of like add on to that, I mean, you can talk a bit more about it if you want, but just we know like issues to do with like balance and loss of power as we get older as well. And resistance training can sort of help with those aspects as well, because we know how falling over as seniors is one of the biggest impacts on our health system as well, right? So the non-negotiable side of the resistance training for me is something that we continue to talk about the reasons why and the benefits of doing it. We should get buy-in and how that looks and how that's actually actioned by each woman. We have to sort of keep saying, and it can look different for you, right? Because a lot of women get confused and just don't know where to start, right? So actually, before we move on to the next thing, that's a great question. Can you tell me, what would you recommend? How would somebody start? Like somebody who's never done this before, who's like, you know what? I listened to Maria and Amanda speak and I want to do something now. I realize it's important to me. What would be some first steps, some baby step movements they could do to get started?
Well, the first thing, anytime that I have clients that are just starting out, they know that that's most what I get these days are people saying they've seen me somewhere or heard something and they just want to start. They want to do it from home. They want to do the resistance training. And so I would first need to know, the first question is, are you willing to work out on your own at the house? Do you want to get equipment? What is it that it looks like that you see it doing? Like, I want women to be part of the solution. I don't want to tell them what to do. So there's a million ways to do it. So when we're talking about balance, one of the biggest things I think is I always suggest, let's do the basic chore stuff that we do, or the on one leg, right? It's like when you're reaching things. These are simple things we can do on a daily basis that make a really big impact on being able on fall prevention. Like you said, fall prevention is a really big deal because falling is a big deal. And but from a resistance perspective, body weight, just starting with those, right? And then the next step would be doing some band stuff. But if someone has a grandchild or a small child, I mean, mine is 7 years, but at this age, most people, smaller children that are either grandchildren or they're around, lifting that baby or the small toddler is functional. It's fun, right? If you're on the ground with that toddler and you lift them up, learning how to lift that child correctly, like those things, it doesn't have to be, again, the weights that you do. I have done videos with my dogs. I mean, mine are very small, so it is. And I do enjoy it because they get cradled while I squat them. And so those kinds of things. But I think that when women are ready to make a change, they are willing to do and try certain things. So I try to give them a wide variety of options that they can use that are budget friendly, because most people are not ready to spend a lot of money. And most women that come to me don't want to go to a gym, like a traditional gym setting. They want to either be set up with a routine that they can do at home or work with me in person or over FaceTime. But they want to start somewhere. And I'm not a big proponent to say, well, then you need a TRX and you need the Bozo and you need a full set of weights, So start with small things and move up from there.
Yeah. And so I think that's it. Like, meet them where they're at. And love that you said, like, and be part of the solution. And I also agree with what you said about that they don't want to be going to the gym. A lot of women don't. It's an intimidating space for a lot of people. And so the idea, I think COVID was really good for us, like, finding a way to make this accessible in the home. I think that's one of the few positives that came out of it. Women saw that they could like just use what's around them and sort of make it work within their home schedule. And so what I'd like to sort of move into now with the conversation is talk about how starting a movement-based workout or with resistance training, how that impacts a woman's confidence, right? Because one of the things that we know that happens through menopause is women stop believing in their athletic ability, their regular ability to do things. How many times do you and I hear women say, I can't do that anymore, or I used to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I try and do with my work is put the power back in their hands and say, actually, yeah, you can, you're more capable than you think. And I personally think a lot of that comes from actually just showing up and just doing things, and just what that does to us from like the endorphin sort of side of it, our feel-good hormones. So, I mean, have you seen that sort of transformation happen as well? I'm pretty sure you have, and how important that is for menopausal women and their quality of life, and quality of life being your expertise?
Yes, so you're absolutely right. I think pure magic, really. It's magic what happens when you start feeling strong and confident. It comes together. It's impossible. I always say I've never had a client to me down the road and say, you know what, I really didn't like getting stronger. Like it ends up being sometimes a side effect. No one ever goes back, says, I really liked less confident and less strong than when I started with you. They might. And when you shift the focus to strength and that it's a repetitive, it's our job, I think, to focus the narrative on functional, like, see how strong you've gotten. Like, you weren't able to do this before. Like, let's remember where we started when we've worked with people, or when someone starts on a new journey and the first thing they can do is lift those 1 pound weights. And then, 2 months later, they're at the 8 or 10 pounds weight. You forget where you started. And so reminding yourself, and I think as fitness professionals, it is our job to say, do you remember, I know you're being hard on yourself right now, but do you remember that when you couldn't jump up on a tiny little, stepper, or how you couldn't lift this, or how you couldn't do this? And they look at that moment when they realize it, it is really magic. Like I live for those moments where they realize how far they've come, but they still at that point don't think that they've gone far enough, because now you know that there's a progression. Like, you started here, you're now here, but you can get stronger because you've seen it happen in the last, 2 or 3 months or whatever. So it's that constant reminder, and it's magical. When you feel strong, there's just nothing quite like it.
Because it transcends outside of the body. That's why. Because it isn't just physically being strong, like, it builds confidence in women. Like, I think it's transformative. And I have an experience with a client quite a few years ago now, who was doing a TRX row. And anyone who's like, watch Maria, does plenty of those on her her pose, right? So she was doing it, and I stood behind her because she didn't want to straighten her arms back into this like supine position. She was scared. And I just was like, I wouldn't let you do something you weren't capable of. I know you can do this. You've been working with me for a long time. I mean, that's our jobs as coaches, to sort of build this confidence in our clients. And she did the row. I stood behind her. I said, if you're going to fall, you'll land on me if that's helpful, and I'll catch you. And she did it, and she started crying, and she just said, I just didn't think I could. And it was a light switch moment for her. It was one of those, oh my God, look at what I'm capable of. I can do anything. And her sport was cycling. She used to cycle to work. And one day she came and said, I think I'm going to join a morning cycle club. I like cycling. I'm going to stay with you. I want to be strong. And now she's doing like these endurance 150K cycles 5 years on. Like, this woman has literally turned her life around. And I feel like I saw that moment happening. I saw her become the person she was always meant to be. And we all go through those moments of fear, and we all go through those moments of wondering if we'll ever find that again, because something gets lost in menopause, whether we want it to or not. And we have to try and keep reclaiming, like, our self-worth and our confidence is really important.
Yes.
Can we go back to the quality of life though? Talk to me about what you discovered during your research, because I actually find this super fascinating. I sort of saw a little bit of your work because I know you have a certification, and menopause quality of life is something that you're very keen to talk about and actually put back into women's hands, right? You want to give them the power back.
Yes. And when we talk about quality of life, it is important to remember that everybody's quality of life is different. What quality of life means for me is different than what quality of life means for someone else. Like, I am willing to spend $8 on a coffee to go to a coffee shop where I can sit in peace and quiet with my laptop. To me, that is something that I truly enjoy doing. I don't mind spending the $8 that I'm going to be there. But for someone else, that might be ludicrous, which is like, I'm going to go on a 5-mile run, which you couldn't pay me to do. Like, I don't care for running. So it is important to remember that people in general, but the quality of life, we have to figure out, what is it? First of all, you can't improve someone's quality of life if they don't know what that means. So really digging into, what is it that improves your quality of life? Does that mean, like, if you're a dancer, like if you really truly enjoy dancing, but you haven't really felt confident in doing it, we need to include that in there. In my study, which I did, and given it was very small, right, because I don't have the funds to do a really big one, especially when you're going through a dissertation, but it was really in essence asking women how physical activity impacted it. And it resulted in figuring out that moderate activity had the biggest impact. Now, if you know, and as we hear every day now, it says lift heavy, blankety blank is the way to go these days, right? I love it. I love heavy lifting and it improves my quality of life. Can't sell that to someone that doesn't truly enjoy that part. They might get to like it, but you can't say, well, this is the only way that you're going to this and that. So again, what is it that improves someone's quality of life is different. So figuring that out has to be step number one. So every time that I start working with a client and during the process of working with them, and it's really what I created a masterclass, and that was the whole purpose of that, is that figuring out, and again, women part of the solution, like make the client part of the journey, because that's what we talk about. It's a journey and I want to be part of it and I'm your guide, but you have to figure out what works for you. Because I can't tell you, I don't know where you came from. I don't know what you've tried before. I don't know what you were finding joy. So when we try new things, did you enjoy it? Why did you enjoy it? Because then we can build on top of that. And then we can figure out how to be tricky and include some resistance training into that somehow. So that is I think it is the foundation to longevity and sustainability if we spend the time to figure out what improves our own quality of life. Sadly, because quick fixes that are out there, I feel like it gets lost because it actually takes time and energy to check in with yourself. And I think coaches and trainers often are not qualified to do it. I think I have a large experience and I have a lot of education, so I feel like I have the basis for this. But I think that we as fitness professionals and as women, you don't have to be a fitness professional, but if your listeners are listening, you're going to be one step ahead creating a sustainable movement routine if you take a little bit of time and figure out what it is that truly brings you joy when it comes to movement. And no boxing, no boxes, not boxing, boxing could be, but no boxes. Like think as free as you can. Anything where your body moves. That's the only rule. That's movement. Everything else is free. And then we can work on that, right? It's like that basis. But I think without that basis, we'll never figure it out.
Yeah, and you made quite a few good points there. I mean, that when all my guests are talking, I always scribble tons of notes because I am always like, "Oh, that was so great." But I mean, I think that you've nailed it there. Like, and as trainers or as coaches, we can't force our ideals onto people. We know what matters. As coaches, we know what matters. We know what we're striving to try and encourage in our clients. But you can't force our ideals on people if it's not going to be received well. For example, the lift heavy shit narrative. We know obviously muscles require to have some type of overload for progression and for us to maintain that muscle mass as we age, even build it. But if we continually tell women they have to lift heavy shit, they're going to probably turn away and go, you've got to stop. I don't want to. Actually, you're not the boss of me and you're not going to make me. I mean, that's what I say all the time. But you're not, right? And even as a menopausal woman and a trainer myself, I really love lifting heavy weights, but sometimes I love going to the gym and using a really moderate weight and just going for really good form and working on my foot position and working on how I engage my stability muscles and stuff like that. And all of that's super important to me too. We have to have the nuance in the conversation. We're going to lose people. We're not going to have buy-in. And I think for you and I feel as though there's messages out there that can be very specific to say the athletic population or maybe, the more active participant in recreational sports. But often a lot of the people that are missed are the general population. And we know the majority of general population don't do enough exercise, don't do enough movement. They don't often have the funds or the facilities to be able to do it. And I've really tried to reach out to women and say, you don't need that. We can help you And it can start with these small steps every day. And that's sort of what I took from what you said then as well, is like the showing, being a participant and consistently doing it, and not looking for this, like in 2 months, I'm going to be like, go from a size 10 to a size 8. We're like, yeah, no, what we're saying is, can you do this for the rest of your life? Can you look ahead and go, yes, I can commit to like movement that fuels my body and my soul and makes me feel good. And I think that's a pretty hard conversation to sell, though, because we're not doing the lose your belly fat in 21 days. You know, I mean, yeah.
Well, and you make it, and that's the point, right? I think the people that are really passionate about what they're doing aren't there to make the quick sale. I will never try to sell something to anybody. And I also will not make promises that I know I can't keep. But when we look, like I use an analogy for when it comes to fitness, it's the same as if you're in an art class, for instance, and the art teacher says, I want you to draw an apple. And there's 20 students, and every student does, maybe one is on a part of a tree with another 20 apples. One is a green apple, one is a big apple, one is a shriveled apple, one is a decomposing apple. And the teacher then comes and says, no, I wanted you to do this. Like, this is what trainers sometimes are. It's just like, I need you to do resistance training, but we don't give them the freedom to explore what that looks to them. Like that might mean something different to everybody else. So for women out there, I want to encourage you to find your own path. Like there is a path that you can find with the help of someone. If you don't know where to go, there's people like Amanda and me and a million other really good trainers and coaches that want you to succeed in finding your own path. Like it isn't the workout that you buy here that someone worked for your friend, like this workout that worked for your friend. I have friends that, they love CrossFit. That's not for me. There are other people that are marathon runners, not for me. You don't have to get on someone else's path and then feel bad about it because you can't make yourself do what other people love to do. And so it becomes feel empowered, explore movement outside of any boundary. That is the one thing that I try to get my clients and the messages I like to put out there. You're the solution.
Right. I love that. And it goes back to what you said earlier about how we've learned and evolved as coaches. I mean, I know I've said stuff in the past that I wouldn't say now. And I actually don't apologize for it because I think it's really good to show that I have an evolution. But, I've hated on CrossFit before. I've hated on, like endurance runners for not doing strength training, blah, blah, blah. And I've very much come back to I feel like I just live in the messy middle all the time now because I think I've just made so many personal mistakes and, I've been through so many like sort of situations that have stopped me in my tracks and that have made me probably more empathetic to other people, right? And I think it's the same with you, right? You've realized that life isn't this perfect path that doesn't throw obstacles our way. One of the things I see in our world, and, we're very niched in our menopause world, but, women really struggle with the changes that we're going through from a physical perspective, as in, they just don't like looking at themselves in the mirror. They don't like what they see. And I went through something similar myself. And I've had to do a lot of work to get to a place where there's an acceptance and I'm not fighting against what's happening. I'm working with it, which is definitely a better place to be. But it's not easy work. The conversations I've had with myself, I've been very open about it. Mm-hmm. What do we know about body image through menopause? Like, what are the thoughts that you have on this? Because I find it quite a sad place that we're in, that women really don't like themselves during this time of their life.
It is sad. It's very sad. And it isn't a conversation though that I'm extremely about because I've been very open about my body image issues and struggles throughout most of my adulthood. But the changes that are happening during menopause, as we know, right, are not due to laziness or overeating or all of these things. I think there has to be more education advocacy around understanding that these changes can be, and not everyone goes through this, right? But most women, 80% of women report being unsatisfied with their body during menopause. It's similar during puberty. So when we look at these, like puberty has a real big hormonal shift, and there's a large rise in body image issues and eating disorders and disordered eating. And that repeats itself when we go through a big hormonal shift during menopause, right? It's just the adverse effect. But what we were talking about earlier, I think one of the focuses has to be realizing that it is a transition, realizing that your body is, I mean, a lot of the conversation about body image is realizing that our bodies definitely are more, there's more to us than our bodies and maybe the belly fat that we're gaining in the middle. I have it, and I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm also not fighting it because I know that there's a process. It's like, I'm not doing anything to make it happen. But I do feel that we have to be open to talk about body image, negative body image talk, self-talk is something that you can't just make it go away. Like isn't something that you like wake up and you're like, today is the day I will never say one bad thing or think a bad thing about myself. That is not realistic. And that's really what I think the body positivity movement has gone a little to the toxic side, because now it's being portrayed as you just have to decide to feel good about yourself. It's really simple. And as a matter of fact, I was laying in bed yesterday and I'm thinking, I have all these thoughts as everybody else has. And I'm thinking every day I have at least one thought that isn't positive about my body. What I've learned about it is I can accept the thought and I can put it away and not act on it in like a way that derails either my day or my thought, or I verbalize it. Like I do not verbalize. I don't give it the power to come out of my mouth, which is a big step. I consider that a big step because, when you're in the midst of it, it's really easy to have that talk. And then you fall into this, like, it derails you. It derails your day. Then you think, well, I can't do anything. It's not worth it. I'm fat. Look at me and then you open up your Instagram and someone's promising you a menopause diet that makes you, or like this, whatever hormone detoxing juice cleanse, or the other day, like weight, exercise makes you fat. I mean, it's those things where, oh my God. But when you are in that space, it's really easy to get derailed by that. So I think we need to have this conversation saying that when you have body image issues, I'm going to say they don't go away. You learn how to manage them.
It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have these thoughts. I worked with a psychologist when I wrote my book, and she sort of said, like, it's like the notice and naming of these thoughts. It's just that you give them power, like you said. Mm-hmm. It's okay to have bad thoughts, sad thoughts, mad thoughts. It doesn't matter. But what do you do with them, right? Mm-hmm. And how you process them. And I personally do find that work is difficult. It's probably the most difficult thing for me. Like the exercise and nutrition and sleep management, honestly, the mindset thing for me was probably the hardest. When you're knee deep in the fitness world as well, it can be challenging, and body dysmorphia is a real issue in our industry. But yeah, like the work will continue, and I think it's okay to be vulnerable and talk about it, right? And hopefully women will realize that we're all the same and we all have these thoughts, but the power is in our hands. What we do with them is up to us. And it can be a game changer when you don't give those negative thoughts power. Right. And the only other thing I would say on that is, like, when I think it was last year on World Menopause Day, I asked women to send me in a photograph of themselves doing something active. And I had 500 submissions, and not one woman looked like another woman. We all come in different shapes and sizes. And I think I called it the shapes and beauty of menopause. And you were part of it, Maria. You're in that. And I loved it. It was so inspiring for me. And whenever I have those times where I don't quite feel like as good about myself as I should, I look at things like that and just go, you know what, these women lift me up. And we have to stop. We have to stop being so hard on ourselves, right? Don't be a dick.
Yes, especially to yourself. I think also one thing that helps me most of the time when I have a bad or thought, I think, is there something that you would want change right now that you think could make a difference? Because we also have to be honest with ourselves, right? If I haven't moved in 3 months and now I'm starting to feel a little different, then maybe including movement could be an actual change I can make to improve that. But if I'm already doing all the things that I'm willing and want to do, and the joy is there, and there's nothing else that I can do about it, then I need to realize that this is where I'm going to be. My body's going to be where it is because there's nothing that I'm willing to do, no drastic anything. I am where I am, happy where I'm at. But my body is like where I'm at, like the mental part, right? Let's realize that where we are now, like for instance, I've, like I said, it's like I have the belly fat. I've never had it before, but I'm also never been as happy and centered in my life as now. So I will take that any minute when I think what I felt like, 20 years ago when I thought I was fat, but I knew I was the leanest. Now looking back, the leanest I've ever been, but still I was over obsessing over it. I was in such a bad mental state. I wouldn't want to go back. So let's remember, how do you feel good? Is your life good? Do you have friends? Like those things, like what that quality of life again, right? The whole picture outside of your body. And then just consider this is where your body feels okay right now because you're in a happy place and this is what it's going to look like. So it's great.
And then I try and add on to that. And so this is where I am. What am I capable of? And it's like how we spoke about things at the beginning. What else can I do? What else am I capable of? And when you sort of change that sort of narrative, it really does give you space to grow again. And that's ultimately what we're looking for, right? Through menopause is it feels as though menopause stops us growing. It stops us finding our potential. And we're saying that it's there. You have to just allow your body to get there, right? And it's a process and not always easy. But anyway, Maria, I've really loved chatting with you. You're such a source of sensible, practical advice. And I need it. Women need that, right? We're just so overwhelmed with all of the nonsense out there and it's getting worse. I feel like it's getting worse. I feel like every day I feel like I could call out another con that's out there. And I don't want to be that person that does that. Sometimes I just can't help myself because it's just too much, right? Like stress fat, like exercise making you fat, like the nonsense behind it, right? But on the flip side of that, I just want, I want women to feel like this is their time. And, I look at women that are older than me doing stuff, changing their lives, and I want to be that person. And so I think that you and I have that same goal for women, right?
Absolutely. I want to look for that. I look at my mother who's in their mid-70s and hikes for 2 hours every day. And I look at her and I'm thinking, this is where I want to be in the 20 some years, right? I want to be able to do that. And that's my goal. And that's the example you want to set. And so we want to look forward to that and not get sidetracked by the million of things. And we're going to have more, right, Amanda? Like you said, there's going to be more, and the jillions of the world that make people feel that you're supposed to be having the 6-pack at 50, and the things that those distractions are there. We need to clean out our Instagrams, and we need to it's sad that we have to, but you have to say no to those ads. And every time it becomes a little less, but because they're going to be more, there's going to be more. I get them every day too. And I want to call them out. And it just takes too much. I'm thinking, this is not
energy.
Where I want to be. Yeah, I don't want to be.
You know what? You're right. These are distractions we don't need. So just remove them. Yeah, I love it. Listen, where can people find you? What's the best way to source you out and support your work, Maria?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Maria Luque, and I am very reachable over email. So at maria@fitnessandmenopause.com. And I have a website where you can sign up to my newsletter, which is fitnessandmenopause.com. And that's how I put out a newsletter every week, every month, and not every week, every month.
Who does that, Maria?
No, but I try to be very accessible. So if people have questions, I get a lot of emails and I welcome them. I do respond to everyone because I really want to help. It is a passion. This isn't something that I do because I have to. It's something that I followed and that I'm truly in. And so I want to help. So if any of your listeners want to reach out, I welcome it.
Yeah, thank you. I feel the same way as well. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you everybody for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye, Maria. Thank you.
Bye, Amanda.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you like what you hear, then why not subscribe to this podcast and leave me a review? You see, when you do this, it helps to raise the profile of my show and attract new listeners. And it also allows me to continue to deliver valuable content with great guests. And in return for you doing that, I will send you my 12-week core-focused program called Abs on Fire as a thank you. Simply drop me an email at amanda@amandasteve.com and I'll wing that your way. Bye.